All right. Thank you guys for joining the free seminar on API testing. So today we will discuss on the basics like what is API, what is API testing. Okay. And we'll try to understand some basics. Okay. With some example, and we'll try to show you how do we test, how do we send an APIs, how do we test an APIs, and also overall picture, right? As a software API testing professional, what is our end goal? How do we do the API testing in real time? So I'm going to give you the overall picture. Okay, based on that, you guys can decide. Okay, whether to take the API testing course and what is the benefit that you can get out of the API testing course. Okay, all right. So let's get started with the first thing. What is API? What is API testing? So our goal or our agenda is to do API testing, right? So before testing, so we know what is testing, right? But what is API? Okay, so what is API? We have to understand. Okay, to understand about this, what is API? Okay, so let me explain you or come up with some simple example. Okay, so okay, so before I go with my example, I wanted to know anybody knows about API already? Anybody of this group knows about API? Nobody? Yeah, at least try to guess something and try to tell whatever you know at least. Okay, so make sure you this session should be interactive, not just like I'm keep telling and you are hearing. So if you know something, you try to share it. Nobody knows? Abhishek, Ajit, Ravi, Vikrant.
No, no.
Okay, no problem. All right. Okay, so all of you guys will be traveling from one location to another location. Basically, maybe you are in one of the city or one of the town. Okay, so how do you travel from one location to another location?
By car.
By car. Okay. Any other options? Okay, car is one of the options. So always you might not travel through car, right?
Yes.
Let's say you wanted to travel to longer distance. How do you travel?
By flight.
By flight, okay. By train, or maybe by bus sometimes. Okay. So how do you book the tickets now?
Online.
Online, correct. Okay, which website you will be preferring usually?
There are so many. Make my trips, clear trips.
Okay, make my trip,
Otherwise, the let's say Indigo or Air
clear
India,
trip,
whatever.
Indigo, Air India. Okay, and so on. So there are many. Okay, so if you detailedly look about it, okay, make my trip is a vendor, clear trip is a vendor, Indigo is a flight owner, right?
Yes.
Air India is a flight owner, right? For example. So Air India has their own website where we can book only Air India specific tickets. But if you go to make my trip, not only Air India, you can book any other flight tickets also. Right. So that is how, right? So that's how, like, if you're always wanted to prefer Air India, then you go to Air India website only. Or you can still go ahead and, purchase Air India ticket on Make My Trip or Clear Trip also. Right. So that is how it is. Okay. So how does Air India communicate with Make My Trip or Clear Trip? Does anybody know? How does Air India communicate or how does Make My Trip communicate with Air India?
Through
Vice
API.
versa. Through
API only.
API only. Correct. Okay. So that means whatever the applications that we are using almost nowadays, okay, we are getting the data, we are receiving the data, we are sending the data information through APIs. So APIs plays a major role nowadays in the market. Okay, so that's a main communication source that people are depending on nowadays. Okay, so to understand better about this API, and let me take the same example. Okay, so to understand better, let me go to Paint. Okay, all right. So as you guys said, let's say, okay, let's say we have two different websites, right? Like one is www.makemytrip.com something. This is one of the website where you search source destination and then you try to book a ticket, okay, flight ticket. So at the same time you have something called Air India. Okay, so www.airindia.com or dot in or whatever, let's say dot in. So this is another website where you can book the Air India related flight tickets. Okay, so what happens is we will be having Air India database somewhere else. Okay, just assume this is Air India database. So they maintain all the flights, whatever the Air India flights that they have, and what time the flight starts, what time the flight end, what is the source, destination, all the detail they try to maintain in their database, right? Air India database. Okay, so we will be having something called Air India backend. Okay, so Air India backend, Air India backend, and so in between we maintain something called Air India APIs. Okay, so what happens? Let's say if you go to Make My Trip, and whenever you search, okay, I wanted to travel from Hyderabad to Bangalore, so you select the source, you select the destination, and then you click on search. Once you click on search, what happens? The request goes to Air India API, and this Air India API will send the same request to Air India backend, and Air India backend will understand the request, and it will create a database query to get the data. Okay, so it wanted to search all the available flights between Hyderabad to Bangalore. Okay, so that request will goes to database in the form of DB query. Okay, so it goes to DB query. So database has multiple data. So multiple flight info will be stored in the database. So that info will be returned to Air India backend, and this backend again will send it to API, and say API will send the data to the Make My Trip. Okay, so why we have something called Air India APIs? So APIs is basically the way how we have to understand is API acts as a mediator between multiple applications. So we have to assume like Make My Trip is one application, AirIndia.in is another application, Air India backend is another application. So if we wanted to communicate, right, if we wanted to communicate between all these three systems, right, so this APIs is the one which is going to help us. So it's basically transfer the data between multiple applications, multiple systems, multiple softwares. That is what the major role, that is what the API is going to do. Okay, so now what we will do, let's say some other user goes to airindia.in and he is searching the list of flights between Hyderabad and Bangalore. So again, the request goes to Air India API. Again, it will understand the request. It will send the request to Air India database, and then it will try to respond back the data. Okay. So once it respond back the data to Air India API, so API will send the data back to airindia.in website. So that means why do we have something called Air India API? So as I said, it's basically to transfer the data between multiple systems. And also, it's not always that Air India only can request. Make my trip, clear trip, as one of you guys told. So clear trip, or there are many other websites. You can also book the flights from paytm.com also. Or you see there are a lot of vendors that we can book flights, bus, train, anything from different applications. So whatever the application you go, okay, so the data still coming from the Air India database to backend to APIs, and APIs is sending the data in the form of APIs. Okay, so as we discussed, APIs is basically used to transfer the data between multiple systems. Okay, so that is what the meaning of API. Okay, so API means it acts as a mediator between different applications. Okay, so that is what the meaning of API. Okay, so how the data transfers and all we will try to understand in some time. Okay, so now did you guys get the clear picture? What is API? How does the API transfers the data between applications? Anybody has any questions?
No.
Okay. Okay, great. Fine. So, can you guys tell me what are the different applications that you are using every day, day in, day out, right? So everybody of us will be using multiple applications, right? So,
Correct.
what are the applications we are using in your mobile, basically? Sorry, nobody using any apps?
Facebook.
Facebook,
I'm
yeah,
is on Flipkart,
Facebook,
where in IRCTC,
Flipkart, right?
IRCTC,
IRCTC, yeah.
my train.
Make my trip.
Where is my train? To look, which give us the exact location of trains.
Okay. And so on. So we will be keep using multiple, and the most used application you guys are missing. Always will be on that mostly. WhatsApp,
Yes.
agree?
Yes.
WhatsApp. So whatever the apps you are using, right? So you are sending a WhatsApp message to your friend or your family or relative. So how does the data transfers? That is nothing but API, right? So that means we are daily, almost every hour, every minute, at least we are using one of the applications, and all of these applications are internally using APIs to send the data between source and destination and so on, right? That means, see, now we understanding how we are tightly depending on APIs nowadays. Okay, so that is what the API means, the API usage. So every day, every minute, every hour, we are using some applications, and those applications internally depends upon API to basically transfer the data. Okay, send the data, receive the data, and represent or show the data on top of your mobile UI or web application UI or whatever it is. Okay, so that is what about it. Okay, so how does this API, how does we send the data basically between systems? we will try to understand now. Okay, so to send the data, basically we are using something called REST API. Okay, so REST API is one of the API process. We are going to basically uh, represent the data and send the data between multiple applications, multiple systems. Okay, so we are going to use REST API. Okay, so REST internally use something called JSON. Okay, so JSON is the structure. Okay, the way how do we store the data, how do we transfer the data between the different applications. Okay, so what is JSON? Okay, so we will try to understand. Okay, so along with the JSON, there are other ways also to basically transfer the data between the applications, right? As we discussed, just assume Make My Trip is developed on some programming language called, let's say, Java. Okay, they developed their application website, using Java and other UI languages. Okay, just assume Air India has developed their application based on a language called Python. Okay, and Air India backend they developed something using called Ruby. Just assume Ruby. Okay, so all three different applications that we are discussing here developed using different language. Okay, so Make My Trip is developed using Java language. Okay, this is Air India backend application is developed in Ruby, and front end is developed using Python. So how does all these applications communicate with each other? Okay, how does this communicate with each other? Because let's say there are 10 people in this class. All of you 10 people can understand whatever I'm telling because I am speaking in a language called English and everybody knows English. Is that correct? Let's say if I speak some different language, okay, where none of you guys can understand, obviously there will be a communication problem. So you guys can understand what I'm speaking. So same way, any application built on any language, any of these languages, can understand some common representation of data called JSON. Okay, so JSON is supported by any of these languages. So JSON supports Java, JSON is supported by Python, JSON is supported by Ruby. So JSON is the preferred way of sending or transferring the data between the applications. Okay, so let us understand what is JSON. How does JSON looks like? We will try to understand. Okay, so first of all, what is JSON? Let's try to understand. JSON is nothing but Java script object, JavaScript object notation. Okay, so this is basically the notation. Notation is nothing but the way how do you store the data into one object. Okay, so that is what the meaning of JSON. Okay, so let us see how does the JSON looks like, and then we will go ahead with the next topic. Okay, I'll just come up with some data. Okay, sample data I'm going to take. Okay, I'm going to take some sample data as first name Lohansh, last name I'm taking something K. Okay, age I'm taking some 50. Phone number. Okay, I have two phone numbers. Okay, so one is mobile. Okay, some number I'm writing, and then landline. Okay, 040 some number. Okay, and then address. Okay, this is the address, some sample address I have taken. So this is the data. Just assume, okay, this data should transfer from, let's say, whenever I try to register as a new user in Air India database, so they are asking my address, my phone number, my first name, my last name, and all the details they are asking. So I have wanted to send that data from Air India website. So I enter all the info on the UI. See, basically, we will be having a forms, right? I enter my first name, last name, age, phone number, address, and so on. I click on submit, so that data transfers to API, Air India API. That will be same request will be sent to backend, and backend the same data it will try to insert into database so that they have my address details and all. Okay, as a Air India customer. Okay, now how does the data transfer between from Air India website to the Air India database? We will try to understand. Okay, so just now as we concluded, we are going to use something called JSON. Okay, JavaScript object notation. So that means whatever the data we have, that data we are going to store in the form of JSON. Okay, so then we will send that JSON. Okay, so the JSON will go and stores in the database. That is how it is going to happen. Okay, so let us understand how do we store this data in the form of JSON object, and how do we send that object to the destination. Okay, so this is the sample data I have taken. So let me try to convert this complete sample data to JSON object. Okay, so what I will do is, okay, let me have this always. So always we have to open the bracket and close the bracket. Open and close curly brace. So in order to create any JSON object. So I am going to convert this data to JSON object. Okay, so I have created a JSON object. Okay, started and then ended. Okay, now what I will do is, let me take this first line and paste it over here. Okay, so this is the key. Okay, first name is like a key. So add this key within double quotes. Okay, and after colon, I see some data. This is the value. So I'm trying to store this like this. So this is how I wanted to convert the first data in this way. Okay, so I have to basically enclose this data within the double quotations. Okay, then next one. So at the end, just remember we have to add a comma over here. Okay, copy this and paste the next data. So again, we have one more key called last name, and there is a value for that second key, which is K. Okay, so let me add double quotations here like this. Sorry, double quotes even for the value and end with the comma. Okay, so next one is age. So just copy this and paste this. Okay, so age is again a key. Okay, so but this is a number. So number I no need to put it within double quotes. I can just leave it as it is. Okay, if it is a string means a group of characters. Then we put it within the double quotations. Okay, so add a comma because we have a few more data points. So here I have two phone numbers, right? Even though it is a mobile or it is a land, but both of them are phone numbers only. So what I will do is, these are numbers of type same, right? Whether it is a mobile or land, but it is at the end of the day, it's a phone number, right? So what I will do is, I will try to represent this in the different way. Let me copy all these 3 lines, paste it here. Okay, so phone number, just make it double quotation here like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open square bracket instead of curly brace. Okay, I will tell you why square bracket. Okay, curly brace represents it's a object. Square bracket represent it's a array. So I opened the array. Okay, so mobile number. So this is mobile. This is the key, and so the value I'm going to give because it's not a normal number. So I'm going to put it in double quotations. Okay, but what I'll do is I'll put this complete mobile into a object like this. Open and close curly brace. And even same thing I will do it for landline also. Okay, so every key should be in a double quotation, and value also I am placing in a double quotation, and close the bracket and close the array. If you see, phone number I have taken as a array, right? Array has 2 values. So first value is mobile object, second value is land object. After that, I have closed both of these objects phones. Okay, so that is the way how do we convert or how do we represent this data in the form of JSON. Okay, we have one more thing which is address. So let me copy this as well. Okay, after this array, just insert a comma and paste this address. Okay, so address is again like key I'm going to store within this double quotes, and value I'm going to also add it as part of double quote. That's it. After this, I don't have anything else because whatever the data we have, we completely converted to JSON object. Okay, so we no need to add another comma at the end of the address. But if you have few more data, then you have to add comma. Okay, so what did we do basically? Whatever the data that we have, okay, this data we have converted or we are trying to send in the form of JSON, and this is how the JSON looks like. Okay, so we opened the JSON object, we closed the JSON object. So every open curly brace should definitely have closed curly brace. And first name, last name, age, all of these are like keys, and every key has a value. Okay, so last name key, value is k. Age is another key, 50 is the value. Phone number is another key which contains an array as a value. And inside the array, we have multiple objects. Okay, first object is mobile number. Second object is landline number. Then we closed the array. Okay, so as I said, if you open the array, you also have to make sure you close the array. Okay, so in that way we try to close the array and insert a comma because we have one more data point which is address. So address also we put it in the double quotations like this. Okay, so in this way, what did we do? Whatever the data that we have, we put it in the form of JSON object. So this is how JSON object is there. Okay, so what we will do, we will be having a form. Okay, so to enter a first name, okay, to enter a last name, to enter some age, to enter some other details, you click on send. Okay, so once you click on send, what happens? The data will be sent between these applications in the form of JSON. Okay, whatever the data we fill in the form, that will be converted to JSON object, and that JSON object will be received by APIs, that will be sent to backend. Okay, so this is how basically it goes. It goes from here to here, okay, and here to backend. So backend will understand the request and it will generate the query. Okay, database query. Okay, that database query will be executed on top of the database. So DB will return the data. So that data will be again going back to API backend, and API backend will send the response two APIs. Okay, and that will again send the data to UI. Right, UI is nothing but the browser. It can be browser, or it can be mobile, or it can be any other way of the stream that we can see the data on the UI. Okay, so that is the way how do we view the response. Okay, so what is that we are trying to do here? Basically, we are sending a request. Okay, so we are sending the request. We send a request. Okay, so same request will go here, and then data comes, and then we finally get the response. So response also could be JSON most of the times, and that response will be shown on the browser, or on the mobile app, or on the UI, whatever we call it. Okay, so this is the way how do we basically create a JSON and send the JSON. Okay, so as a API tester, what is that we are going to do? So we have to create a similar kind of JSON, and you send the JSON, and you get the response, and just make sure the response is correct or not. Okay, so that is what we have to do it as a API tester. Either it can be a manual, or it can be automation. Okay, so now let us see. As we were discussing, there are different ways of transferring the data between the applications. Okay, it's not only JSON. Okay, through APIs we can send in many ways. Okay, what are those ways? So as we discussed, JSON is one of the way. You can send the data in the form of text. You can send the data in the form of XML. You can send the data in the form of HTML also. Okay, so different ways we have it. So you can send the data in any of the way. Okay, but out of these text, XML, HTML, why only we are preferring JSON? Okay, so JSON has a lot of key benefits. Okay, why we are preferring JSON? Let us see that. Okay, all these are very basics and very important. Okay, JSON key points. Okay, 1 minute, guys. Okay, so let's understand what are the key points that we can get help with the JSON. Okay, so the very first one is JSON. JSON is self describing or easy to understand. Right, so by looking at this JSON, can't we understand what does this info is all about? Anybody can understand, right? No need of explaining, because it's plain English almost, other than open curly brace, close curly brace, double quotes, and array and all. Okay, other than that array, so we can easily understand. So by looking at this line, okay, we understand. Okay, so this is nothing but the first name Lohansh, last name K, age 50, phone something something. So looks like he has two phones, mobile and landline, and he has an address and this address. Okay, so this is easy to understand, right? And JSON easily it is describing itself. Okay, so that is about it. So next key point with the benefit, key point with the JSON is lightweight. So what is lightweight? Right, so as compared with other representation of data, it is very simple and very light, so no much complexity. Okay, when we look at HTML or XML or JSON, So obviously JSON is lightweight. It's very simple. Okay. Then next one is language independent, right? So it doesn't depend on any one particular language. So as we just discussed, say this application is built on Java, this is built on Python language, this is built on Ruby. Irrespective of the language, JSON can be understandable by all of these language dependent applications. So this is one more key point, a major benefit that we have with the JSON. Okay, so then next one is easy to read a JSON, write the JSON, right? Obviously, we just have written some simple JSON, right? So it is very simple to write it. Or even by looking at this, we can easily understand what has been represented in this JSON object. Okay, so that is one more benefit that we have with the JSON. Okay, so then the next one is JSON supports JSON supports different types. So this is string basically, right? So group of characters is nothing but a string usually. So we are storing string values in the JSON. We are storing numbers in the JSON, and we are storing arrays in the JSON. Okay. So in the same way, two more things are there like Boolean and null values. Okay. Let's say if I don't know the last name, for example. So at that point of time, we can just pass null like this. Okay. So which means that if there is no data, then we can send null as part of JSON. Okay. So that is one thing. I can also say comma another key. I'm just having something like Indian. I'm writing true, something like this. So I just wanted to send a flag whether the person is Indian or not. Okay, so either true or false I can pass. So overallly, by looking at this example itself, we know we can understand JSON supports string, group of characters. It support null value. It support numbers. It support arrays. Okay, it support Boolean. So true, false is nothing but a Boolean, right? So these are the different things that JSON supports, right? So JSON supports string. Okay, it supports numbers, it support arrays, it support null values. What else? Boolean. So these are the different data types that JSON supports. Obviously, these are the most data that we might have to pass between different applications. So all of them JSON is being supported. Okay, so we understood and concluded that yes, we have lot many benefits with JSON as compared with other way of transferring the data. And also JSON is lightweight and other ways are difficult to send the data. Okay, so overall we understand or we see that there are more benefits with the JSON, so better we can use JSON to transfer the data between the different applications. Okay, so now let me give you the overview. How do we basically send the data between applications and all? Okay, so I'm opening my Postman. I'll show you how do we test the API manually, and same thing, how what are that we are going to automate and all. Okay, so let me go to one of my post request. Okay, so this is a tool called Postman, guys. So which basically is used to write our APIs and send the request. So once we send the request, we get the response. Okay, so then we can validate the response actually. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, let me take another paint. Okay, so I have something called Postman client. Okay, Postman client. So this is a desktop based application. So we have something called Postman server. Okay, this is Postman server, right? This is the server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a request from client to server. Okay, so I send the request from client to server. Okay, so what does server do? Server will process my request and it will send back me the response. Okay, so this is basically a request and I will get a response. Okay, whatever the response I am getting. So as we already discussed, most of the times request also could be JSON object. Okay, so response also could be JSON object. Okay, so whatever the request response we are getting, right? So both of them can be JSON. So that response will be taken and shown on the Postman. Okay, so what I will do is in my Postman client, I wanted to create a workspace. So whoever already working on automation, you guys should be able to know what is a workspace. So workspace is nothing but the place where I can store all my testing related documentations, request, test cases and all. So into a separate folder. So folder is nothing but a workspace. Okay, so I wanted to create a separate workspace in my Postman client with my account. Okay, so that workspace probably what we can do. See, you can see there are a lot of workspaces I have with me already. Okay, so I'm going to create a new workspace. See, once I click on create workspace, it is asking what type of workspace that we wanted to create. For now, let me select a blank. Okay, blank type of workspace. Click on next. So once I click on next, it is asking me the name of the workspace. Okay, so let me give some name as workspace WSP111, some name I'm giving. Okay, and they are asking summary. If you wanted to give summary, you can give, or else it's okay. Okay, it's not a mandatory. Okay, and what type? I mean, who all can access your workspace? In general, workspace can be accessed by other team members, or only personal, or private, or partner, public. You can make it public, so anybody also can access your workspace. That means whatever the request you are creating here, that can be made public. Anybody can access. Private means only for you, personal for you. Private means for one some particular people, invited people. Team means your complete team. Okay, so something like that, they have different access. So for now, let me make it personal. Okay, let me click on create. So once I click on create, what happened? A new workspace is created with the name WSP111. Okay, if I go here again workspaces, I can see WSP111 is there. So whatever however the way I created the workspace manually, same thing we can also do it through API. Okay, so let us see how we can do that through API, right? So for that, I have a endpoint already to create a workspace. Okay, so this is the endpoint to create a workspace. So we have to select a host and URL, and I should have a authorization, which is nothing but a token and body. So here I have to give the name of the workspace. So let me give WSP 222 something. Okay, and still I wanted to make personal, and this is a personal workspace with some name. Let's say 222 something. So I'm just giving some data. See, whatever the data I filled here, okay, while creating the workspace in the form, same data I'm going to send it in the form of JSON. See, by looking at this JSON, so just now we understood, right, some sample JSON. By looking at this JSON, even anybody can understand. So, okay, this is something called workspace data. This is the name of the workspace, type of the workspace, description of the workspace. See how simple the workspace JSON object is. right? So let me go ahead and try to click on send. Okay, so once I click on send, what happened? It responded. We got the response as 200 as a status code, and also I got some sample response. Sorry, response body. Okay, in the response body, I have something called ID. That means this postman has created a workspace, and this workspace has been given a unique ID, and this is what the unique ID is all about. And the name also they are confirmed. Now, if I go here, the list of workspaces, I can see a new workspace is created for me with the name WSP222. So whatever we do manually, we are also trying to do it through the APIs. Okay, so that is the way how we can, do some task through API. See, even whenever you guys try to send a message through WhatsApp, this is how the data transfers. So there will be URL. Okay, there will be type of method, and you have to whatever the message you typed and click on send. Okay, that will be converted to JSON and it send the request. Okay, so request will be going from client to server. Server will process your data and it will respond back with another JSON, right? So we are able to see the response JSON over here. Okay, so usually this response JSON will be taken and shown on the UI. So as part of API testing, we never bother about the UI, right? Whether it's a mobile UI or it's a web application UI. We focus on the APIs, right? We do the testing through API, which is postman manually, and automation, whatever that we try to test now manually. So same thing we are trying to automate it through a tool called Rest Assured. Okay, so as part of the course, we are going to cover manual and automation with real-time project. Okay, so that is what we are going to cover. Any questions, guys, to anybody till now? Okay, so looks like there is some question from the chat. Okay, API automation will also be covered. If yes, which language are you going to be used for API automation training? Yes, so we are going to cover automation also, as I said, along with the real-time project and automating that project. Yes, so for that we will be using Java language. Okay. Okay. Any other questions, guys?